Hi, I'm Stacey. I came home early from a trip, my suitcase still in the trunk, only to find a for sale sign on my lawn. My brother-in-law was selling the house I built from scratch. My mother, she just laughed, like it was a joke. But the real punch in the gut? They never thought I'd fight back. And when I did, everything shattered. I came back a day earlier than planned. The work trip wrapped quicker than expected, and I thought maybe, just maybe, surprising them would feel good for once. I stopped by a small shop on my way home, picked up a gift for Mom, nothing fancy, just something that reminded me of her favorite tea. Pulling into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the unfamiliar SUV parked out front. It wasn't the car that unsettled me. It was the way the blinds were open, the front door ajar, and laughter floating out like the house didn't belong to me anymore. I didn't knock. I pushed the door open slowly. There he was, my brother-in-law, James, standing in my living room like he owned it. He was gesturing broadly, his voice carrying through the space. And this is the original hardwood, still in great shape. I froze. There were two strangers standing in the hallway, nodding, inspecting. One of them reached for the fireplace mantle. "This is my house," I said. My voice cracked, but it cut through everything like a blade. The woman gasped and stepped back. James turned sharply, plastered on that fake smile of his, the one I never trusted. "Stacey, you're early." Yeah, I was. He stammered something about me being back early, how he was just helping out, how this was a misunderstanding. But I could feel it, the way the air shifted. I wasn't supposed to see this. He wasn't supposed to get caught. The buyers made awkward excuses, nearly tripping over each other on their way out. James didn't flinch. "Look, I thought you were gone through the weekend. You didn't call." "This is my house, James. What the hell are you doing here with buyers?" He tilted his head, calm like he was explaining the weather. "Technically, it's not yours. It was always part of the family trust. It's not that simple." I stared at him. "I have the deed." He shrugged. "Paperwork gets messy." You know how it is. That's when it started to unravel, not just what he said, but how easily he said it. Like he'd been waiting for this moment, like it was all rehearsed. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. "You need to leave." He didn't argue, just smirked, grabbed his keys, and strolled out like he had nothing to hide. I called my mom. I needed clarity, sanity. I needed someone on my side. She showed up 30 minutes later, dressed like she'd just come from a brunch she hadn't invited me to. Hair perfect, smile tight. When I told her what happened, she laughed. "Oh, honey, you're being dramatic. You always do this." That laugh cut deeper than anything James said. I wasn't sure what hurt more, her words or how easily they came. "I'm not being dramatic. He brought strangers into my house." She waved a hand. "It was always temporary, Stacey. You needed a place after the divorce." "This was never meant to be permanent." "But you said—" "I said what you needed to hear at the time." Just like that. Like it was nothing. A familiar ache rose in me. A childhood echo. Don't make a scene. Every time I dared to push back, to stand my ground, I couldn't look at her. "You lied." She didn't even blink. "You'll land on your feet. You always do." That night, I went to my room. Or what used to be my room. Boxes lined the hallway, already labeled with my name. I sat on the bed, the one I bought, in the room I painted, surrounded by walls that had never really been mine. I opened the small gift I'd bought her, the one I picked out so carefully. I held it for a moment, then placed it back in the bag. It meant nothing now. I stared at the ceiling. The silence pressed down harder than their words ever could. Because silence doesn't lie. Silence tells you exactly where you stand. They always said this was home. But now I wondered, had it ever been? I pulled out my suitcase, unzipped the side pocket. The deed was still there. That night, I didn't unpack. I hid the deed in my suitcase instead. I woke up to a sound I shouldn't have heard. It wasn't loud, just a soft metallic click, like someone gently turning a key. I blinked into the dim morning light, still groggy from jet lag and whatever mess of emotions I'd gone to bed with. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. But then the doorknob jiggled. I sat up. The door creaked open slowly, then stopped. I got out of bed quietly, walked to the doorway, and looked out into the hallway. No one was there. The house was still. No footsteps, no whispers. But something wasn't right. I turned and looked at the door. Really looked at it this time. The knob. The keyhole. It was on the outside now. I stood there, staring at it like I was trying to solve a riddle. The door had been locked, from the outside, all night. And I remembered turning the lock myself from the inside before bed. I remembered the sound, the feeling of security. But that security had been flipped on me. I took a long breath. I wasn't ready to feel scared, not yet. Confused, maybe. Angry, yes. But fear, that would come later. I got dressed in silence, moved slowly. Each sound in the house now felt deliberate, measured. I opened the door wider and stepped into the hallway, half expecting someone to be standing there waiting. But no one was. The kitchen smelled like coffee and butter. James was at the counter, humming some off-key tune like he hadn't just trapped me in my own room all night. "Morning," he said, looking up with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Didn't think you'd be up so early." I didn't respond right away, just walked in, poured myself a glass of water. My eyes didn't leave his face. "Did you lock my door last night?" He blinked, like I'd asked if it was going to rain. "What? No. Maybe it jammed. You know how old these doors are?" I leaned against the counter, staring at him. "It wasn't jammed. The lock's on the outside now." He sipped his coffee. "That's odd." "Maybe it got flipped during some repair. You'd have to ask your mom." Of course, my mom. She walked in just then, fully dressed like she'd been up for hours. "What's this about doors?" she asked, brushing a stray hair from her cheek like it was the most important thing happening in the room. "My door was locked," I said, "from the outside." She didn't even pause. "Stacey, honestly, you always find a way to make things complicated." "Is that what I'm doing?" I said, keeping my voice flat. She waved her hand, moved to the fridge. "You're letting your imagination run. Maybe it was always like that, and you just never noticed." That was when I saw it. On the counter. A plain envelope. Open, like someone had meant to put it away but got distracted. I reached for it without thinking. Inside, legal-looking forms, my name on the top, property transfer documents. My eyes stopped at the signature line. It was signed, with my name, but it wasn't my signature. Every breath I took after that felt tight, deliberate. I looked up. James and my mother were both watching me now, silent. I didn't say a word. I slid the papers back into the envelope and smiled. Not big, just enough to keep them off me. "I think I'll go for a walk," I said. James raised an eyebrow, but my mother just nodded, too quickly. "Get some air, dear. You always feel better after a walk." I stepped outside, and for a moment, the morning light almost made things feel normal. Then I saw Mrs. Kimball, my old neighbor, trimming her rose bushes. She looked up and waved. "Oh, hi, sweetheart. I was wondering when I'd see you." I walked over. "Hi, Mrs. Kimball. Is your family moving in?" she asked, cheerful. "I saw the movers last week. Looked like a big job." I paused. "Last week?" "Yes, dear. Your mother was out front, directing them. Boxes and boxes. I thought maybe you were downsizing." I smiled faintly. "Thanks for letting me know." She patted my arm. "You take care now." I walked away, hands trembling in my coat pockets. They hadn't just started this yesterday. They'd been planning it, organizing, moving things behind my back, while I was across the country thinking I had a home to come back to. The lock, the forged documents, the boxes, everything lined up now. That's when I knew. I wasn't just unwelcome in my own home. I was being erased from it. The county recorder's office wasn't far, but the drive felt longer than it should have. I kept my hands steady on the wheel, my thoughts sharper than ever. I wasn't panicking. Not anymore. I needed answers. I parked across from the courthouse, took a breath, and reminded myself not to look like someone whose whole life had just been stolen. The lobby smelled like paper and stale coffee. People stood in line with file folders and manila envelopes, talking in hushed tones. I got in line like I belonged there. When I reached the front, I looked the woman in the eye, mid-50s, gray streaks in her ponytail, glasses resting halfway down her nose. Her name tag said Beth. "Morning," I said. "Just following up on a property tax matter. I need to check the transfer history on an address." She nodded, took my ID, and started typing. I watched her face closely. Her expression didn't change until it did. Her fingers paused, jaw clenched. She didn't say anything right away, just reached beside her, pulled a thick folder, and slid it across the counter. "This looks like a completed file," she said, flat. "Transfer's already been processed." I opened it. My name, my house, my signature. Only, I never signed this. It was a power of attorney form, notarized, filed, authorized, giving James full legal right to act on my behalf. My throat tightened. I kept my hands steady as I flipped pages. I'd never seen this document in my life. The notary, a name I didn't recognize. There was no memory, no event, no conversation where this happened, but the ink was dry, the stamp official. "Can I see who submitted this?" I asked. Beth didn't blink. "It was filed by a Marcy Weston." "My mother." Beth looked up at me, something in her eyes softening. "If this isn't right, you need to talk to a lawyer yesterday." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I was nodding to her or just trying to hold myself together. The drive back was a blur of buildings and red lights. I didn't scream, didn't punch the steering wheel. I just stared at the road and played every scene from the last week back in my mind. "Don't be dramatic, Stacey. You were only ever staying here temporarily. The boxes, the locks, the papers. I thought of Mrs. Kimball's words, movers, last week. If they were moving things out while I was still halfway across the country, what had they taken? I hadn't seen my old journals, the cedar box my father gave me, a photo album that used to sit on my nightstand. Were they sold? Tossed? Burned? I clutched the steering wheel tighter. A new kind of panic crept in. Financial. If they forged my signature once, what else had they touched? What if my accounts were already drained? I pulled over at a diner, not because I was hungry, but because I needed somewhere I wouldn't be watched. I stayed in the car, dug into my bag for a notepad, and started writing. Names, dates, events. Everything I could remember. I drew a line across the page, then wrote one word in the center. Mom. I circled it in red ink. For the first time, I stopped thinking like a daughter. I started thinking like someone building a case. I cataloged every slight, every cover-up, every act of silence disguised as love. They didn't just make a mistake. They executed a plan. Cold, deliberate. I sat there for almost an hour, watching the sun climb over the trees, writing down the betrayal in ink because I knew I'd need it when memory tried to make excuses for them. They didn't just want me out. They wanted me deleted. I wasn't just going to get my house back. I was going to make sure they never did this to anyone else again. I was still parked outside that diner, the blueprint of betrayal open across my passenger seat, when my phone lit up. It was one of those automated bank messages, bland tone, no feeling, just the facts. Your mortgage payment is past due. Account status, on hold. I stared at it like it was speaking another language. I tapped the number, waded through the robotic menu, pressed 0 3 times just to reach a human. When I finally did, the voice was chipper. Too chipper. "Yes, I can confirm there's a title dispute on file. Your mortgage has been frozen pending legal review." "Who filed the dispute?" "One moment." I waited. My fingers were shaking. "The name is Mr. Hoyt Buckley." I closed my eyes, let out a breath. "What kind of dispute?" "Well, it's linked to a recent transfer of ownership. Power of attorney was cited. If you believe there's been a mistake, we'll need in-person documentation." I hung up without saying goodbye. I wasn't surprised. But that didn't mean I wasn't boiling. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway. My front yard looked like it belonged to someone else. The for sale sign was still there, bold and unashamed. And parked along the curb were 3 unfamiliar cars. I stepped out slow, steady. My house looked different. like a hotel room you lived in too long, slightly rearranged, smiling too hard. The front door was ajar. Inside, I heard voices, not loud, calm, the kind of calm that comes from people who think they have a right to be somewhere. I walked in. Three strangers stood in my living room. A woman pointed toward the ceiling molding like she owned the place. A man flipped through a folder. They turned when they saw me, froze. One of them, older, maybe in his 70s, gave me a polite nod. "Oh, sorry, wrong address?" Before I could respond, Hoyt appeared like he'd been waiting behind a curtain. "She must be upset about the frozen account," he said with that same infuriating grin. I didn't blink. "What are you doing in my home?" The strangers looked between us. Awkward, like they'd just walked in on a marriage fight at a dinner party. Hoyt waved a hand, still calm. "We're just doing a quick walkthrough, evaluating the space before relisting." Relisting. I glanced toward the kitchen. Drop cloths on the floor. A toolbox. Paint samples on the counter. "You've started remodeling?" My voice was flat. Cold. "It's an investment. Once it's sold, we all benefit." "I didn't authorize anything." He tilted his head like I was being silly. "It's for your own good, Stacey. You'll thank me when this place sells above market." The strangers shuffled out, muttering something about calling later. One of them mouthed good luck to me as they passed. I stood there, listening to the silence after the door clicked shut. Hoyt walked toward the kitchen like he still had business to do. I didn't follow. Instead, I walked to the old study at the back of the house, the one room they hadn't touched yet. It smelled the same. Books, carpet, dust. I laid out the mortgage notice. Then the POA file I copied at the courthouse. I started making a timeline in my head, when the forgery was filed, when the movers came, when the bank froze the account. This wasn't sloppiness. This was strategy. They wanted me confused, trapped, homeless. I sat down on the floor, leaned my back against the bookshelf, and started drawing on a notepad I kept in my purse. Names, arrows, motives. They weren't just nudging me out. They were waging a quiet, smiling war, and I'd been too loyal to see it coming. I heard footsteps overhead. Then silence. I stayed still. My pen paused. I looked around the room, something tugging at the edge of my attention. On the far wall, half tucked behind an old roll of blueprints, was a new one. It was folded, but not aged. I pulled it free. It was a floor plan, my house, but not my handwriting. Someone had marked up changes, walls to knock down, electrical reroutes, built-ins to remove, and scribbled near the margin in red marker over what used to be my room. Stacey's space, convert to office. Then I found the blueprint, with my name scribbled into walls I never authorized to change. After finding that blueprint, I didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the afternoon. I pretended to be on the phone, grabbed my keys, and said I was running to the store. But I never left the block. I parked a few houses down, waited 5 minutes, then slipped in through the back door. Quiet as breath. I knew that house better than they did. I knew where the floors creaked and which doors to leave cracked, so they didn't latch. I ducked into the guest room, far side of the hallway. Shut the door. Killed the lights. Pressed record on my phone and slid it under the bed. Mic up. I waited. It didn't take long. Their voices drifted in through the thin wall. My mother, laughing. Not the nervous kind, but something meaner. Hoyt's voice followed, thick with mockery. "She's always been fragile. Thought the world owed her a parade because she moved back." My mother chuckled. "She never asked for anything else but attention. She should be thanking us. We're doing her a favor taking the house off her hands before she wrecks it. She was never going to use it right. Now at least someone will." Every syllable felt like a paper cut. Slow, sharp, insulting, but in that polished way people use when they want to hurt and still sound reasonable. I didn't move. I barely blinked. Just listened. The kind of listening that rewrites how you see someone. Not just the words, but the tone, the smugness, the finality in their decision. When their voices faded to murmurs, I reached under the bed and stopped the recording. It was all there. I waited a few more minutes, then crept out. The hallway felt darker, air thicker. I walked the house like a stranger in someone else's home. The photos that used to hang by the stairs, gone. Frames empty or replaced. Books I'd left in the den were missing. My old jewelry box was cracked open, pieces shuffled, some missing. I opened the closet in the guest room. Empty hangers. No jackets, no scarves, nothing I remembered. Down the hall, by the laundry room, I noticed boxes stacked chest high, labeled in black marker, Twyla. My old nickname. I opened one. Inside were my yearbooks, childhood drawings, letters from friends I'd lost touch with. My diary, the one I kept when Dad passed, all packed away, like I'd already left. My legs gave a little, but I caught myself on the edge of the washer. No one saw. No one needed to. This wasn't about helping me. This was removal. Systematic. Calculated. I took the long way back to the main hallway, circling behind the kitchen. Hoyt was coming up the stairs. Alone. I stepped in front of him. Calm. "You packed my things?" He blinked like I'd slapped him. "What? No, what are you talking about?" I nodded toward the garage. "My laptop bag's out there. It wasn't yesterday." "Maybe the movers." "No movers touched my stuff. You said the house wasn't sold yet." He stumbled. "It's probably just a mix-up. Boxes got moved during cleaning." "I heard you," I said. "Through the wall." His mouth opened, closed. My phone was in my hand, screen dark, but ready. "You recorded us?" he asked, half laughing. My voice didn't shake. "You really think I didn't know what you were doing?" Before he could respond, my mother stepped out from behind the kitchen archway, her voice flat. "That's enough, Twyla." That name again, like it stripped me down to childhood, like I was 5, not 40. I didn't flinch, I didn't speak, just stepped back, turned, and walked to the study. I closed the door, sat at the desk, and put on my headphones. The audio was clear. Their laughter, their cruelty. I wrote down timestamps, highlighted phrases, marked every sentence that held weight. I emailed the clips to a lawyer I'd spoken with briefly last year, then added a second email. Darvin. He'd always told me, "You don't need to scream to be heard. Just say the right thing at the right time." I drafted a post next, one for the neighbors. Simple, truthful. "This home was never for sale. The documents are fake. I am the rightful owner. And I will prove it." But I didn't send it yet. I closed my laptop. Breathed. Not shallow, not rushed. But deep. Controlled. Tomorrow would be the beginning. Not of questions, of answers. I pressed record again. Not to eavesdrop, but to record their defenses when I confront them tomorrow. I stepped out of the study when the noise from the kitchen started to quiet, dishes clinking, chairs being pulled, laughter. I wasn't part of. Dinner. The kind of gathering that used to mean something. The kind of night where Dad would have told a story, and someone would have made a mess of the mashed potatoes, and someone else would roll their eyes at Hoyt's jokes. But those nights were gone. What was left felt staged. I walked slowly into the dining room, stopped. There it was, my chair. Gone. In its place was a high chair, white plastic, a bright green cushion, and a sippy cup already strapped in like a seatbelt. It looked brand new, like it belonged more than I did. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at the spot. The wood was clean where the legs used to be. They'd wiped it down, erased the impression of me. My mother glanced up and said it like it was nothing. "We needed the space for the baby." I stared at her. Then at the empty chair on the other side of the table, the only one with no place setting. She didn't blink, just went back to folding a napkin. I sat at the far end, grabbed a plain chair from the kitchen, and dragged it across the floor myself. No one offered to help. The meal started, conversations layered over each other like I wasn't there. Hoyt talked about paint samples. My sister complained about zoning headaches. I waited for a break and said, "I got a notice from the bank this morning. My mortgage is frozen." My mother didn't look up. "We'll talk later." Hoyt chuckled. "Let's not ruin dinner with paperwork, huh?" Then he raised his glass. "To new beginnings. And finally getting this place where it belongs." Chairs scooted, glasses clinked. Forks kept scraping plates like they hadn't just stomped on my life. I picked up my own glass. empty, and said, "My beginnings too." No one responded. The silence was louder than anything. I waited a beat longer. Nothing. I set my glass down and excused myself, walked away with every step burning hotter than the one before. I stopped in the hallway, leaned against the wall for a breath, and then moved toward the trash bin in the mudroom. The smell hit me, lemon cleaner and something sweet, and I saw her purse on the bench, open. It wasn't snooping, it was survival. Inside, tucked between a receipt and a folded paper towel, was a printed agenda. I didn't have to pull it all the way out to read the heading. Family vote, approve sale, transfer funds, divide proceeds. I checked the invite list. 5 names. Mine wasn't one of them. I slid it out, folded it twice, slipped it into my back pocket. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't about me being too emotional or behind on things. They had planned this, scripted it, voted on my absence. I went back to the study, closed the door behind me, laid the agenda next to the forged POA, played the recording again. Then looked at the chair in the corner, the same one I used to read Dad's letters in. I picked up a pen, wrote a note on yellow legal pad. I wasn't invited. I'll be there anyway. I'd seen this kind of thing before, not in courtrooms, not in news stories, but in family silences, in birthday parties skipped, in the way people talked over me for years and called it love. I'd sat down too many times just to make others comfortable, bitten my tongue, smiled when I wanted to scream. Not this time. I didn't need my old chair. I'd stand if I had to, because next time they tried to vote on my life without me, I'd be in the room, and I wouldn't ask permission. When I walked toward the meeting room, I felt the weight of every chair empty for me, and I carried that weight like armor. The next morning, I walked through the house with purpose. I'd barely slept, but sleep didn't matter anymore, not when the truth was louder than exhaustion. I was looking for my camera. I remembered leaving it somewhere near the living room, maybe behind the couch. As I turned the corner, I stopped cold. There on the wall, newly framed, freshly hung, was a large photo. A family portrait. Everyone was in it. My mother, Charlena, Hoyt, even the baby on her lap. They were all smiling, standing right where the old fireplace used to be before they ripped it out. But I wasn't in it. Not just absent, removed. The space where I should have stood had been perfectly balanced out, as if the photographer had been instructed to center the frame without me. I stared at it longer than I should have, like maybe I missed myself somehow, like maybe I was standing in the back or partially blocked. But no, I wasn't there. Charlena walked in behind me, holding a cup of tea. "Oh, you saw it. Isn't it great?" she said like it was a gift. "When was this taken?" "While you were still traveling, I think. A few weeks before you came back." She smiled and sipped. "It turned out really nice, right?" I didn't respond. I just kept looking. "You didn't think to include me?" She tilted her head. "You weren't around, and honestly, it was kind of last minute." That was a lie. You don't get a full professional shoot like that on accident. Hair done, baby dressed in coordinated colors, lighting perfect. It was planned. I walked past her, still silent, and headed for the front door. I needed air. That's when I saw it. The "Coming Soon" sign in the yard. Bold, white letters on navy blue, stuck right into the lawn where the mailbox used to be. A printed banner across the top read, "Buckley Family Estate." And right below it was a wide-angle photo of the house, my house, with the new siding and shutters. The caption, "A legacy property, crafted and cared for by the Buckleys." No mention of me, no Stacey Marin, no record of who'd paid for the original foundation, the roof repairs, the back deck, the kitchen tile I spent weeks researching. A man walking his dog slowed and pointed. "That place? Buckley clan knows how to pick 'em. Nice setup." He kept walking. I touched the sign. My hand trembled a little, but not from nerves. I turned back toward the porch and saw them through the window. My mother and Hoyt, mid-laugh, sipping coffee like it was just another Saturday. I picked up the framed photo from inside and marched back down the steps, held it high, then turned it toward them as I walked into the yard. "You erased me," I said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "From my face and my name." Hoyt came outside, steps casual. It's just marketing, Stacey. No, I said, steady. Marketing is a slogan. This is identity theft. My mother followed, voice low and fake sweet. We thought it would help buyers connect to the space. People like family stories. You can brand a thing, I told them, but you can't erase its creator. Hoyt shook his head. You're making a scene. I turned to him, eyes steady. No, Hoyt, you made the scene. I'm just correcting the cast. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Nothing left to say. I walked back inside and pulled out my phone. Typed a post. You can't sell what never belonged to you. Hatch, I was here. I hit publish. Then I called Darvin. Get the signage pulled, I told him, and let's fix the public records. Start with the deed. My name, not theirs. I scanned the photo, zoomed in on the space I should have filled, and emailed it to the local historical society and a contact at the community newsletter. Subject line, a family portrait with a key member removed. They wanted me gone so bad, they forgot how obvious absence is. You don't hide an empty chair, you highlight it. I walked back outside, this time with the key to the house, the original one, and locked the metal base of the sign to the stake holding it up. 1 turn, 2 turns. Done. If they wanted to take it down, they'd need my key now. They'd need my permission. The next morning when the sign came down, it felt like the first breath of freedom in months. I was out front, watering the potted plants, the only things they hadn't tried to replace, when I noticed 2 women whispering at the corner of the driveway. One of them had a local paper in hand. I could feel their glances. Curious, maybe guilty. I walked over. One of them smiled too wide and held it out like she meant to offer it anyway. It's got your name in it, she said, but not kindly. Front page of the Neighborhood Echo, a column titled Home Chic Home. There it was. Local family adds artistic touch with found scraps. Draft pages of an old writing project now line the inside of their vintage-styled kitchen cabinets. A photo of my kitchen, my handwriting, my manuscript. They'd taken pages of my novel, early chapters I'd kept in a box, marked private, and used them like wallpaper. Glued, shellacked, turned into decor. Outdated drafts, the article called them. I stood there, eyes fixed on the paper. My hands trembled, but not from nerves. Not this time. I walked back inside, straight to the living room, grabbed the original manuscript copy from the drawer, took a picture of a paragraph, then a photo of the one printed in the article. Side by side. No caption. Just truth. I posted it. 2 minutes later, Darvin called. We're using this, I told him. I want it included in the filing. It's proof of misuse and defamation. Got it, he said. Also, they filed a counter this morning. Hearings today. Judge set it for 11. You good to go? Let's take back what's mine. Before heading out, I stepped onto the porch. A small voice called from next door. Morning, Miss Stacey. It was the Jenkins girl. 7, maybe 8. She skipped closer to the hedge, then added, in that open, unfiltered tone kids have. Mom said you're just staying over till they figure out who owns the house. I didn't answer right away. I looked up, saw her mother at the upstairs window. She yanked the curtain shut. I knelt down to eye level. Well, I said, sometimes people think stories are over when really they've just been paused. She smiled, not really understanding, and ran off. But that moment stuck with me. That was what they'd been telling folks, that I was temporary, a placeholder in my own life. By 11, I was in court, hair pulled back, simple navy dress. I didn't smile, I didn't frown, just still. They were already seated. Hoyt smirked at me. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Their lawyer opened with the same tired defense, that the power of attorney had been signed during a difficult time, that I was not of sound judgment back then, that family had simply stepped in to stabilize the asset. Darvin stood. Your Honor, he said, the document they reference was forged. We now have the original audio files confirming collusion, as well as evidence of misappropriation of intellectual property found within the home. He handed over the photos, the kitchen, my manuscript. The judge, an older woman with glasses low on her nose, read through each exhibit silently, then looked up. "Where is Ms. Marin?" I stood. "Do you have anything you wish to add?" I nodded once. Only that this home wasn't built by paperwork. It was built by sacrifice. No one in this room made those choices but me. The judge looked to the other side. "You've presented no valid proof of authority, and your actions constitute willful misrepresentation. This court rules to return legal possession of the property to Stacey Marin, effective immediately and retroactively to the day of improper transfer." Hoyt's face dropped. My mother whispered something to their attorney. The judge continued, "Furthermore, this court refers the matter to County Fraud Division for further review." I didn't gloat. I just breathed. As I left the building, I didn't look back at them, not once. By early afternoon, I unlocked my front door. This time, no one there to block it. The rooms felt quieter than usual, but not because they were empty, because they were finally mine again. I walked through slowly, hands brushing across the wall I'd painted myself, the shelves I'd built, the little notes I'd written over the years, folded and hidden in drawers, untouched. I found the Buckley Estate sign in the garage, leaning against a box of canned goods. I carried it outside, placed it on the driveway, and cracked it in half with one swift kick. Back inside, I took down the fake family portrait. In its place, I hung a photo from my college graduation, my real smile, my real family, my mentor, my best friend, my dog. This was my house. I whispered it aloud. "I belong here. Always have." As I locked the front door behind me, I knew the war was won, but the healing had just begun. The morning light stretched through the blinds, warming the edge of my bed. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up to tension in my jaw or a weight in my chest. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was still, but not empty. It felt like mine again. My phone rang all morning. Reporters, distant cousins, former coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. I let every call go to voicemail. I walked the halls slowly, stopped at each room, opened closet doors, sat on the floor of my old studio, and flipped through the books I used to keep under the window seat. I hadn't touched them since before the chaos began. Some were dog-eared, others still had notes stuck between the pages, reminders of who I was before they all tried to erase me. By mid-morning, I stepped barefoot into the backyard, grass damp with dew. The rosemary bush I'd planted years ago had grown wild, stretching toward the fence line. I crouched down, ran my fingers through the soil. It was dry but still alive. When Darvin called, I answered this one. "It's done," he said. "Everything's finalized. Title's back where it belongs." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "Thanks," I said quietly, then hung up. That was it. No drum roll, no confetti, just one sentence and a signature. Later that afternoon, I started cleaning the kitchen drawers. No real goal, just a need to clear out the things that didn't belong anymore. Behind the cutlery tray, tucked flat against the wood, I found an envelope, yellowed edges, my name in her handwriting. I sat at the counter and opened it with careful fingers. The date, one day before the house was listed for sale. Inside was her handwriting, no greeting, no closing, just a short, slanted message. "I don't know if this is the right thing, but I froze the money. I'm scared he'll take everything from you." I read it once, then again. My eyes blurred, but I didn't wipe the tears away. She knew. She saw it coming. She just didn't know how to fight it out loud. Maybe she thought this was enough. Maybe it was the best she could do. I whispered, "You should have told me." I folded the letter and slid it into my pocket. The sky was overcast when I called my sister. Her voice on the other end was cautious. "Stace? You knew about the letter?" I asked. There was a pause. Then a slow, unsure, "Yeah, I did." "Why didn't you say something?" She asked me not to. She was trying, in her own weird way. "But she was scared of him, Stacey. You know how he gets." I nodded, even though she couldn't see. She should have been afraid of losing me instead. Another pause. Then softer. You're right. We talked longer than I expected. Not about forgiveness, not about getting close again, but about the small things. Mom's old teacups, the color we painted our shared bedroom once. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it wasn't silence either. Right before we hung up, she said, "She kept your stories, you know, even the ones from high school. They were in the back drawer. She never threw them away." I didn't say anything for a long beat. That afternoon, I got in the car and drove to the community center down by the elementary school. I'd seen the flyer posted outside the grocery store. Senior Storytellers Club, looking for guest speakers. I walked inside and found the organizer. Her name was Maggie. Gray hair, red glasses, a clipboard always in hand. "I'd like to lead a workshop," I told her. "Weekly. For anyone who's been told their truth doesn't matter." She smiled. "You got a name for it?" I looked around the room, saw a woman in the back watching me. Something in her face, soft, proud, reminded me of my mother when she wasn't trying to win. "Yeah," I said. "I do. Writing your truth when no one listens." Maggie grinned. "We could use that." That night, I sat out on the porch, pen in hand. A new notebook open. First line of the first page. "This house was mine." And it was. Not every house can be rebuilt, but every story deserves to be finished.